We're very pleased to have our keynote speaker. We'll come up in just a moment. How many have heard Miles before? Okay, you better watch out those same jokes, Miles. I don't know if they're going to go over this time. Well, we're very pleased to have Miles Gordon, and let me give you his bio. Miles is CEO of Gordon Group Associates. He was featured in actually 7 of our last 6 Economic Outlook seminars. He's received rave reviews for his candor, his insight, and ability to communicate complicated concepts in an easy-to-understand fashion. Mr. Gordon's former CEO of ING Advisors Network and former chairman of Financial Network Investment Corporation. He has an extensive background in securities regulation, the investment management industry, and economics. Mr. Gordon's the first person in the country to serve as director or trustee of each of the financial industry's 3 major regulatory agencies. That is the NASD, National Association of Securities Dealers, SIA, Securities Industry Association, and FPA, or Financial Planning Association. He's been a leader in the financial services industry for now over 25 years. Mr. Gordon's currently consultant to Fidelity Investments and is a frequent speaker at both industry as well as public events. He's an avid follower of economics and an avid follower of politics as they relate to economics, so this should prove to be quite interesting. So without further ado, Miles Gordon.
I've known Paul certainly a long time, and he really goes all out for you people. He really puts the interest of the client first, and couldn't ask for a better guy. Anyway, does anybody if I take off my jacket? Okay. All right. Getting too fat. Well, I saw some of the questions that Paul had asked about the economy. I'm going to ask those same in a little bit and delve into a little bit more, but some of you have heard me before. How many have heard me before? Boy, how are your memories? Listen, I don't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, let alone, so we'll hopefully they're not too good, but actually we've been doing pretty well. So, I'm going to, the talk has been, because one of the other offices that I've done, this is my 8th speech in 12 days. And Fidelity is the one who sponsors me going around the country like this. And is Chuck in the room? There he is, Chuck Hamilton. It was the local Fidelity fellow. Give him a big round of applause. Does a terrific job for everybody. Okay. For those of you who don't remember, or do remember, but I have to do this at any event because Fidelity requires that of me, I have to give my disclaimers. Now, a couple disclaimers. First, I am going to talk a little bit about politics, so if I offend you, whoever you are supporting or want to support, I apologize right now. I'll get into that in about 3 minutes. When I left the firm, which is now quite a long time ago when I was the president and CEO of the brokerage firm I was with. Is Doug in the room? Doug? Doug King? Well, forget it. He's kind of my successor, so to speak. He's heard me talk already. Oh, there he is. Hey, Doug. Doug King, who is not the guy immediately after me, but has followed. But let's give him a big round of applause. Okay, well, when I left the firm, it had about 2,500 or so reps. How many does it have now, Doug? Still there? He left. I don't even know. But in any event, when it left, it had about 2,500 reps or thereabouts. Pretty good size firm. And I dropped down to a firm of 3. I took quite a pay grade drop and everything. And I was theoretically number 1 when I was the president. It was worthless. I should not have been. I should have been the person on the bottom. You people are on the top, but that's beside the point. But I am now number 3. Who is number 1 and 2? My wife? And somebody said the dog. The dog is number 1. And we do have a couple stories about the dog. Before I forget, this is, everything I say, I do have some jest because I want to keep it entertained. But this one I say in total sincerity. Did you hear the news this morning about this compound that can make dogs die? Xylitol or something. I've already talked to my wife. She says, I've thrown everything out in the house that has it because dogs are dying from it. In other words, they eat something. You know, it's like you put bread on the table for me, I'll eat it because I'm like a dog. You shouldn't eat it, but the dog don't know. So anyways, if you have xylitol in the house, and how many of you have a dog that you care for? And who's more important in the household, the dog or the husband here? The dog! So in any event, if I say something that does offend you, if I use the wrong him or her, I'm not totally politically correct, don't blame Fidelity, Chuck Hamill, don't blame them. Don't blame my wife. Certainly don't blame Paul and his great group. You can blame the dog if you want, because she does get offended when I do not call her a canine American. She's very sensitive about that. So those are my disclaimers. Fidelity, Paul, I think I've said them all. That's enough disclaimers. Okay, let's go back. Let's get more into the substance now. Again, how many of you here are very optimistic about the economy? That would be on my far right, your left. The glass is half full over the next year or so. Not too many. How many are very pessimistic over the next year or so? About the same amount. How many of you have no clue? The vast majority. Well, that's good. When I get frightened about the stock market, when I think things so good, it's when most people are half full. They think it's going to get better, or it is better and it's getting better. Why? Why do that frighten me? This response does not frighten me at all. In fact, I like it. What's that? The Dow's is up, and if everybody's already in, who's going to be the new buyer? There's no more money left. Conversely, when everybody is down, that means there's plenty of money on the sidelines to fuel it going forward. And so you don't want it too full. Too negative isn't so good either, but it's better than that. But when most people aren't sure, which is almost all the time, chances are there's plenty of money to go around and the markets will continue on their merry way. Now, as most of you know, I'm generally very optimistic, and I am right now as well. But I am because I'm right at least 70% of the time. Because in a 10-year period, the stock market is going to go up 7 out of 10 years, and if you're in a bull market, it's going to go up 8 or 9 out of 10 times. So I'd be an idiot to say it's going to go down, because I can't predict it that well. Most of the time, the markets will go up. That's just history. So, I now see where your guys are coming from. Now, let's get into what might happen with the stock market with respect to the elections. Now, for those of you who don't know or don't remember, I am not a Republican. Okay? I am not a Republican. I am accused by my Democratic friends of being one step to the right of Attila the Hun. For you Democrats, I'm not a Democrat. I'm absolutely not a Democrat. My Republican friends accuse me of being one step to the left of Bernie Sanders. So I'm not there either. I am the classic down the middle, centrist, okay? Vote for the person, him or her, not by any party, but I'm just down the middle. Now, how many in this room consider yourselves more Republican? Not too big. How many consider yourselves more Democrats? More. How many are centrists? Okay, almost the majority. But anyways, it's about, I would give it a third, a third, a third. Some of you did not raise your hand again, but that's okay this time. From here on in, you're going to have to start raising your hand. Okay, now, first question is, how might the elections of next year, and they already have, affect the stock market? First, the stock market, everything is uncertain. Whenever I hear the stock market doesn't like uncertainty, it's always uncertain. You don't know what's going to happen on the way home. But you can minimize this uncertainty by certain things. And that's what the stock market likes. It likes less uncertainty. There's always uncertainty, but you like less of it. Now, if you get somebody to the far left, Bernie, how many think Bernie's going to make it? How many think Hillary will be the nominee? Yeah, that's pretty well a foregone conclusion. That table over there is not voting. They're eating dessert. Forget it. I'm not talking to you anymore. If the market thinks that Hillary will tilt way to the left to win the election, the market won't like that. The market likes down the center, less surprises. And I'll guarantee you one thing. If Hillary does become the nominee and she wins, she will go right down the center. Why do I say that? Don't know? Don't know your history, do you? What happened in 1994? Clinton was in office for 2 years. They tacked way to the left the first 2 years. What happened in the congressional elections of 1994? Republicans swept. Big upset. And by the way, the crowds were telling me that back then. But that's beside the point. But in 95, right after the elections, what did the Clintons, and it was both of them, you had a co-presidency. And if you don't think that this next one will be a co-presidency, you're wrong. Bill loves the limelight. He just eats it all up. In any event, what did they do, the Clintons, in 1995 with respect to their political agenda? More left, more right, or what? Right, they went to the right and came right down the center. You had a Republican Congress. What happened to the stock market for the next 5 years? Went straight up. Straight up. That is the best scenario, by the way, is a Republican Congress with a Democratic president, and a Republican Congress with a Republican president is also pretty good. In fact, they're very close. I got a chart up here. So on one side of the coin, we already know, although it's a year away, we know where the Democrats will be, even though, don't listen to all of the hyperbole during the election. She is going to be down the center, because that's what won in 1995. Now you got the Republicans. And already it's starting to bear fruit. About a month ago, John Boehner resigned. He was a fairly ineffectual majority leader, Speaker of the House. Just couldn't get anything done. And the far right in Congress was upset with him. A lot of the base was upset with him, which, by the way, gives credence to why you have outsiders who are leading. People are kind of upset. They want to get something done. So what happens? He resigns, and it becomes fairly apparent that Paul Ryan is going to become Speaker of the House. Speaker of the House is a very, very important position. It's third line to the presidency. And it's actually much more powerful than the vice president. So it's a very important position. Paul Ryan, far right, far left, where is he? He's center right. And he has been able to get big things done with the Democrats. And you should know it right from your home state, what happened with the budget thing 2 years ago, with whom and what happened. Ryan and Patty Murray. They came together, they got a budget deal, and that is a mega deal. When Paul Ryan actually gets in, but it was pretty well known that he probably would. What did the stock market do this past October? Way up. It's one of the best Octobers ever. Because, not the only reason, but was certainly a factor that the Republicans seem to be moving a little bit more towards the center. And you know the Democrats are going to move towards the center, and that's what the stock market likes. What happened literally in the second day that he was Speaker? They reached a deal with the administration over what? The debt. Now, I know many of you think that we should default on the debt to make sure we don't spend more money. because it is the curse of all things is government spending money. Well, that's nice. The only problem is that if you decide to default on the debt, you'll go into a depression. And if you think the stock market is only go down. So what happens? Paul Ryan's in there for a day or two, and they reach an agreement, and there was going to be a big filibuster by the far right of the Republican Party. Say, we can't do that. We can't do that. What's his name? Rand Paul gets up on television and says, I'm going to filibuster this. This is not going to go through. This is terrible. How long was his filibuster? 18 minutes. That's not much of a filibuster, and it gets through like that. What does the stock market do? Goes up. So whenever you see the center seem to be taking the key, helps the stock market. And that's why I think 16 is going to be a good year. Now, let's get back into what's going on right now. We know it, we've got the vote over on the Hillary side. Now you got the Republicans. You got 10, or actually you got 14 different guys running, and one lady. That will narrow down somewhat. But the question is who will be there and who won't be there. Now I'm going to ask this question. If you don't want to vote, that's okay, but you're going to be surprised at the reaction because this is the 8th meeting, and I've gotten almost the identical reaction from all 8 meetings. And prior to that, I had a lot of small dinner meetings, and I asked it, the percentages are almost spooky. Of Republicans or centrists in the room who might vote Republican, Republicans probably would, and the centrists might. That's by definition. Democrats, don't raise your hand here because I know which way you'll go on this, so do not. Republicans and centrists, how many of you would not vote for Trump? The table I was sitting at, I rest my case. It was exactly the same thing this morning. Every meeting I've been in, now granted this is the largest, which is actually even better for a vote, but almost all the other meetings, almost the exact same demographics, almost exactly the same, would not vote for Trump. For whatever reasons. He's too arrogant, too narcissistic, whatever. If he appears to be getting the nomination, and we'll know pretty well in the next few months. Now he seems to be dropping a little bit. As he was ascending about 2.5 months ago after that first Republican debate, I was having lunch with an old college roommate of mine, one of the smartest guys I know, who's a psychiatrist. And I said to him, Dennis, I don't mean to be stepping over into your boundary because I'm certainly no psychiatrist. I said, Dennis, I think Trump is a narcissist. And he goes, you think? And he says, on a scale of 1 to 10, this guy's an 11. So the question I asked him, I said, does a narcissist think that he can win, or is this guy doing it just for publicity? Is he just a marketer? He really doesn't want to be, but does he think he can win? Answer, yes. A narcissist, when they really go at it, they think they can win. Now the $64 question, and I wish I had the answer, Dennis and I have been trading voicemails for the last week as Trump seems to be faltering just a little bit. And I said, Dennis, if a narcissist sees that he or she is going downhill, not going anywhere, what will he or she do? That's the $64 question. And darn it, Dennis hasn't responded to me. But there's 2 things. One is my pigeon psychology, or psychiatry, which is very pigeon. But I do know many people who know Trump, have dealt with him. My brother's one of them. Trump is as cheap as the day is long. He is as cheap as the day is long. He does not like to spend his own money. End of story. Right now, he hadn't had to spend his own money because he's getting free advertising. The networks love him. They don't care if he's going to win or lose, but he brings in viewers. That's what they want. They don't care. They just want eyes. So, Trump may drop out if his numbers don't continue to go up. In fact, if they continue to go, they may drop because he would have to A, spend money, and B, his ego may not allow him. That's what I'm trying to get from my buddy Dennis. I've written a few letters to a few friends of mine as long as 3 or 4 weeks ago that I said Trump could be out of this thing by Christmas. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. But let's assume that his numbers stay okay and actually may even go up. He will stay in as long as he thinks he can win. There's no question about that. Does the market like him? How many think no? How many think no, the market would like him? 1. Fair enough. Who knows? I think they would abhor him. Abhor him. And again, I'm not a Trumpster. I don't personally like the guy. But in any event, why? Because what are his views on Social Security? What are his views on foreign affairs? I can do a great job. I'll do a great job for you. I really know. That's good. That's nice to know. I'm glad you think you can do a good job. Well, maybe you're wrong. Well, does that create more certainty in your mind or uncertainty as to what he'll do? How many think that by him saying he's going to do a great job, that's all you need? One guy. How many think, oh, I'm not sure what he's going to do? I mean, he has his finger on the button. What if he doesn't get along with Putin so well? Kaboom. Not good. That creates more uncertainty. Uncertainty the market does not like. They like certainty as much as they can get. Trump is uncertain. And frankly, so is Ben Carson, because he's totally untested. How many here would, Republicans and centrists, how many here would not vote for Carson? Would not. Well, that's interesting. Okay, a fair number would not. Well, I can tell you that the establishment Republican Party, the GOP, the party regulars, the people who raise a lot of money, blah, 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 they abhor Trump. Because what happens is that Trump, if he does go on, has no chance of winning the election. You just saw the stats here. The Republicans, in order to win, must get very good turnout. They have to get it. Otherwise, demographically, they don't got a chance. Well, if over almost half of you said you wouldn't vote for the guy, you don't think that they're not polling that right now? The Republican establishment knows that. I mean, granted, you groups are great, but they're going to people like you and they're saying, no, I won't vote for Trump. The Republican establishment said, not only will we not win the presidency, we may lose Congress. Because there are 54 senators, there's 54 versus 46 in the Senate Republican, but of the third that are up, 2/3 of that are Republicans. And therefore, if you got Trump as the leading card, a lot of those senators may not make it. You could lose the Senate. And you conceivably could lose the House. That would be a disaster for the Republican Party. A disaster. It would put him back 20 years. In fact, just as proof of that, there was an article, an editorial in the Wall Street Journal today. That's somewhat of a GOP establishment newspaper. Would you agree? I can't think of one more. Back page article, editorial. Trump looks like Herbert Hoover. That is about as bad as an endorsement as you can get. You can't do any worse, except the one that Trump got last week from Mike Tyson. The truth is stranger than fiction. So in any event, there is no chance that the Republican establishment will go for Trump. And from your little reaction here about Carson, that may be the case as well. He just doesn't have any experience. And is experience overrated?
You didn't ask who votes for Carson. You asked who wouldn't.
That's all I need. That's all I need. Because it's the negative vote. That means turnout. That's all. Okay. But what Carson, I mean, he's not Trump, let's face it. He's not the narcissist that doesn't seem. But he's an unknown. And they may go after him, I don't know. But if Carson seems to be going there, stays in. Trump seems to be going in. What you could have come next August. Does anybody know where the convention is, the Republican convention? I think it's in Ohio, but I'm not sure. You could have what has not happened in many, many years, in fact, in nobody's adult lifetime in this room, I don't think, a brokered convention. In other words, all the candidates win a little bit, and nobody gets the majority of the candidates prior to the convention. Nobody. Certainly, in the last 30 or 40 years, it's not even been close. But it can happen, and in fact, it used to happen a lot. Who might be the candidate? One of the people who has done okay but not won the majority? I submit to you it could be this person. Jan is my wife, for those of you who don't know. Jan and I were on a trip this past fall, and we happened to stop into Boston. And we went to the Kennedy Library. Anybody been to the Kennedy Library? Great library. If you're ever back there, it's really a very good library to go to. And of course, at the end of our little jaunt around, I lost my wife, but I knew exactly where to go. Where do I go to find her? The gift shop. Didn't have to call her. I knew exactly where she would be. And she is right in front of the checkout, and what book is sitting right in front of you? You've all heard of it. Probably not many of you have read it, and certainly nobody's read it recently. What book? You've all heard of it. Written by Kennedy. Profiles in Courage. Okay, anybody read it recently? I didn't think so. It's not on the bestseller list. And I said, I haven't read it. I've only read excerpts of it, and it's been 50 years. So I said, I'm going to pick it up. So I picked it up. The audio is the best way to do it because it's only 3 discs, so it's relatively easy to read. And what he did is he described over our history, United States history, all the periods when we had problems. We had as much dysfunctional government as we have now, maybe even worse. And yet these several individuals were able to stem the tide of the dysfunction, and we went on and actually got better. And he described the profiles of these different, it was 8 senators. And I said, now that's very interesting. And I started thinking, well, who is out there now? Because we're pretty dysfunctional right now. Who is out there that could bring it together? And I came up with one name, one guy, Paul Ryan. Young guy, bridges the gap, has the guts to stand up to his opponents, and has the guts and has the smarts to be able to do it. If you're really interested in what could happen this year, or you just really enjoy history, pick up Profiles in Courage. It's a fascinating read. I mean, it's as relevant today as it was in the 1950s when Kennedy wrote this. And then I said, well, wait a minute, what about experience? Because some of the other candidates don't have much. Trump, Carson, Rubio. Rubio has very little. Most of them don't have much. There's a couple that do. Jeb Bush has plenty. How many think Jeb Bush is going to make it? No one. I think you're right. And so I started thinking about all these different guys. And then I said, experience, huh? Now, Kennedy certainly had, unfortunately, an abbreviated presidency, only 3 years. How old was he when he was elected, 1960? 43. How old will the youngest of the potential candidates be in a year from now? 45. How many years did Kennedy have in government? 1 term. That's it. 1 term. His father had a lot of experience, good and bad. But in any event, experience may be overrated, somewhat. Now, if you really like Obama, and he's a fine gentleman, I'm sure, but his experience has shown that he didn't have the experience he needed in the foreign policy realm. George Bush Jr., not the father, the senior, the son, the former president, 41 I guess they call him, he didn't either. He didn't have the experience. He hadn't been out of the country more than 5 times before he was president. His father had the experience. His father was a really experienced guy. But experience, it depends who you surround yourself with, what are your views. So I think the Republicans have a very good chance unless they get an outsider, whether it be a brokered convention or one of the young, more establishment type of guys. Who I don't think it will be is Cruz. Not that I have anything against him, but he did answer the question that the geniuses from CNBC put to him. What is your biggest weakness? And it comes down to Cruz, and he says, nobody likes me. I'll give him one for honesty. But to be president, you got something called the likability factor. They got to like you. And if everybody hates him, and apparently when he goes to lunch in the Senate chambers over there, it's 99-1 against him. So he's honest, but he's just not a nice guy. For those of you who might like Cruz, anybody really like Cruz? Okay. He's very smart, so smart that there's a professor at Harvard named Alan Dershowitz, who is no Republican, trust me. Alan Dershowitz was asked about Cruz, where Cruz went to law school. And Dershowitz said, and he's been at Harvard for years, he said, he is the smartest guy that I ever had in class. So don't underestimate Cruz. Very, very smart, but nobody likes him. I don't think he'll get it. But. Okay, so I think that this crazy election season is sort of winding where you're probably going to have some sort of a centrist. I don't think you'll have the outsiders for whatever reasons. The outsiders would hurt the market for next year. In other words, if it looks like it's certainly Trump, Fiorina has no chance, she's gone. Wonderful woman, but she ain't going to make it. She just laid off too many people at HP. The Democrats would crucify her. My friends in Silicon Valley said she has zero chance, so it won't be her. So you're not probably going to get an outsider unless it's Carson. And Bernie Sanders, he has no chance. I'm surprised he's even staying in for a while. He's a crusader, but whatever. So it's probably going to be somewhere down the center. You got a Republican speaker now who seems to want to try to get things done. That's good for the market. Is the market the only thing that affects it? No, but it is certainly an effect. The reason I bring that up is when I was a kid, I was about 9 or 10 years old. My father, may he rest in peace, was a very successful investor. That's really where I learned all of this stuff. I used to sit and listen to him. And my mother said to my father, why are you talking to him? He's 9 years old. He says, don't worry, it'll sink in. He was right. And I'll never forget one thing that happened is we used to talk about the stock market a lot. He would talk to me. I didn't know a thing. I mean, I'm 9 years old. And Eisenhower had a heart attack. Remember when Eisenhower had a heart attack? Did anybody know what happened on his first heart attack to the stock market? Went down. And I said to my dad, I said, why did the stock market go down? Because the president had a heart attack. And he looked at me, and these are exact words. And he said, because everything affects the stock market. And I've 60 years, almost 60 years later, everything affects the stock market. And elections are one factor. A scale of 1 to 10, it is not a 10, but it's not a 1 either. It's a factor. And the more uncertainty you get, the little bit more volatile you will get. The more certainty you get, the better. And that's where I think we're at. So I think 2016 is going to be a pretty good year. Okay, did I offend anybody yet? All right. Now we'll get into the more substantive part of the talk. Conclusions. I have to give the conclusions early on. Jan and I live in Palm Springs. We've been there about 12 years now, a long time. And I give a talk in Palm Springs every once in a while. And I learned in Palm Springs you must give the conclusions very early in the presentation. If you go down there in the winter, and many of you people come down to Palm Springs in the winter, and I don't blame you. Seattle is a wonderful, wonderful city for 2 months a year. I asked the lady today, how often do they play golf? She says, every day. I said, every day they play golf here? I said, are you nuts? She says, oh, no, we come out in the rain. I mean, I would no more play golf in the rain than the man in the moon. And I play about 150 times a year. Any event, in Palm Springs, the people are old. If you go down there, you're going to think that you're on the older side and doing okay. When you get down there, you'll find out that you are on the younger side and very poor. So anyways, I have to give the presentation generally at lunch because that's when they're eating dinner. Or if they're not, they're going to be eating dinner very soon because they start eating dinner at 3 for the early bird. These people are rich as Midas, but they eat dinner at 3 so they get the early bird special. When you go to the theater, the senior rate is 42. Can't figure it out. Anyway, so conclusions. Okay, the most important thing you should know about the stock market, how it's going to do, is whether or not the economy is going to grow. I'll have a few charts you'll see in here in a couple minutes that when the economy is growing, that is the white sections. Maybe I can fast forward to them real quick so you can see what I'm talking about. Right there. Just look at the unemployment rate. The blue sections are recessions. The white sections are expansion. Okay? Most of the time you're in a white mode. White, that is, the economy is growing. And if you want to see how the stock market does, flip that chart over. I mean, it's really as simple as that. But we'll come back to those in a minute or two. Okay. If there's going to be a recession, if there's going to be a recession coming on, that is not good for the stock market. You'll get a good 20-25% down. Not good. Paul and the group can try to warn you. They should have you positioned where you're not subject to it, but they can only do so much. I mean, it is not easy when you're going into a recession. So the $64 question is there going to be a recession? And the answer is probably not. It's probably not going to be a recession. And I'll show you the charts in a few minutes. The economy is going to continue to grow. That's good. But it's going to grow slow. A lot of people hearken back to the days of Reagan. The Republicans who sit there and say, we got to go back to the days of Reagan. He is our mentor. That was 30 years ago. The millennials, the people who are around said, I don't care about Reagan. If the Republicans keep harping on the Reagan period, they're a loser. Because people say, I don't care what happened 30 years ago. The world has changed. I mean, you have something called the internet. You have globalization. You've got all sorts of things. We are not going back to that period. And the growth period of the 80s, 4% or more, or the 50s and the 60s, is a day gone by. The growth period in the United States is 2 to 3%. That's about it, folks. But it's growth. What are the countries that are really growing today? China. India. Japan, sort of. What do China and India have in common that we don't? Population. Now, we'll talk about it in a little bit, but China has been growing. Now, they're growing at 6.5. They think that's slow. Of course, the problem with China is that you don't know if that number's a real number or not. You don't have a clue. I mean, seriously, you don't have a clue if it's real or not. It could be totally imaginary because it's a controlled economy. For whatever our faults are, our numbers are pretty real. I mean, there's always a little bit here or there, but they're pretty real. Not in China. We don't know. We hope that they're growing at that rate, but you don't know for sure. And there's somebody who wanted a question, will the Chinese renminbi, their yuan, that's their currency, that's their dollar, will that become the world's currency reserve? Not a prayer. Not a prayer. Why? What could happen to the yuan tomorrow? Yeah, the government just says it goes down like that. You can't trust a government that is a dictatorship. You can't do it. How many countries in the history of the world and today have defaulted on their debt, said, no mas. When's the last time we defaulted? Never. That's the answer, is never. When's the last time we were out of debt? No, we've been in debt. We have been in debt. We run a few surpluses, which is an annual basis. Did that in the 90s. We haven't been out of debt since 1837. England, who has done pretty well over the years, when's the last time they defaulted? Never. When's the last time they were out of debt? If you get this one, you're really good. 1690. That's, that's 400 years ago, plus. They've never defaulted. The English pound has been, if you don't have a revolution and you don't default, you'll be okay. People will want to invest in you. How long have the Chinese government been in power? About since 1950, so that's 65 years. And how many times have they defaulted or whatever? They do what they want. So there is no chance that they will become the reserve currency. Other countries possibly, but nobody's as big as us. So, in any event, I hope I answered that question. I didn't mean to be harsh, but that's just the facts, ma'am. Okay, so we have a slower growing economy. There are faster growing, and we'll talk about China and its effect on that, because clearly the world is now globally tied to each other. Interest rates are a key. If interest rates go up radically, that hurts the stock market. If they go down radically, generally good, not always. If they just stay like this, that's good. Less of a surprise. Now, a lot of people, I'm not going to talk much about it. You can talk to Paul, Adam, Tim, you can talk to them about it, but there's a lot of speculation to whether the Fed will raise rates. Anybody heard about that at all? Okay. Has anybody not heard about it? It's funny, you asked that question 20 years ago, nobody would know. They wouldn't have a clue. But today, because of the internet, 24/7 television, we all know about it. So, every 45 days or so before a Fed meeting, the market gets worried. And one of the things that happened in August, when we did have a drop, pretty good sized drop, and actually the year really hadn't been all that great either. It's been a decent year, but now it's the least positive. What was coming up? September meeting, potential raise in interest rates, and one of the factors that led to the drop. There was another factor, that was China, but that was a potential lead-in. So now you have meeting coming up December 16th. That means November could be a little testy, because you just had a huge October, huge. Does the November mean it could go? I don't know. I don't try to look at it on a month-to-month basis, day-to-day, month-to-month. I don't do that, and neither do the people in the office. But if it does happen where the people get nervous that it's going to be a rise, market could get a little volatile. Now, what happens when the rise does come? Because it will. It could be December. It could be March. It could be June. It probably won't be past June. Why do I say that? The elections. And it's already come up, by the way. Trump brought it up. Yeah, he brought it up. He says, the Fed is in Obama's back pocket. This guy is so full of it. But in any event, 7 minutes? That's all we got? Oh, boy. But when it happens, the market will go down. In fact, if it's pretty certain, it'll go down beforehand. But it'll come back almost right away. Almost right away. So don't call them. Don't call the office and say, oh, my God, get me out. Don't. If the Fed does raise rates, what does that mean in their terms of the confidence of the U.S. economy, good or bad? It's good. It means we have the ability to do it. What are the other countries around the world doing with respect to raising rates? Everybody's dropping except one, the United States. We have the strongest economy. That's the good news. If we raise rates, and remember what I said, people want confidence in the government. Is a return on your money, a return of your money? Of your money is more important. What are interest rates in some countries in Europe? Now, negative. You pay them to hold your money. It's happening. Could it happen here? Hopefully never. Hopefully. Be horrible. But in any event, we are the ones who have enough confidence to raise our rates. Our dollar goes up. If our dollar goes up, what happens to our exports? Companies like Boeing, who export a lot, Caterpillar, Tractor, Deere. What happens to those exports? They go down because our goods become more expensive. Conversely, take China. They devalued their currency just a little bit, but as our currency goes up, what happens to the value of their imports? Is it easier or harder for them to import? It's easier, and it makes their goods cheaper here. This is a nirvana to my wife. But the big nirvana is that we have taken 2 overseas trips this year where the dollar has appreciated. Now, my wife has been to many of these meetings, and she kind of knows exactly what's going on. And she says, dollar going up versus all other currencies, that makes their goods over there cheaper. And she goes, oh my gosh. I said, it's not a sexual experience, dear. But let's not get so excited. Went to Europe. She saw it all the way. When we were on this last trip, we went from Montreal down to Boston, New York. We started out in Montreal. And she said, what's the value of the currency? The Canadian currency. I said, 72 cents to the dollar. She said, that's a 28% discount. You mean everything I buy is 28% less? Oh, boy. Go into the first store. Now, I got to find out from you men. She goes in the very first store, Louis Vuitton. How many men have not heard of Louis Vuitton? Be honest, not heard of it. Really? Is this your wife next to you? Sir, you either are a saint for a wife or you are extraordinarily naive. One of the two. So she walks into Louis Vuitton, and my wife, many of you may have met her, she's pretty direct. She goes to the sales lady and she says, that dollar of yours is really cheap. Are things still on sale here, 28% off? She says, no. She says, no, what do you mean? She says, everybody from New York and Boston during the summer came up and bought all our goods. They did. Louis Vuitton had no goods except the new stuff coming in, which was 28% higher. And she goes, oh no, don't tell me this. I was dreaming about the sales. And the lady says to her, don't worry, madam. Many of the stores still have their merchandise and they have not raised prices. And she says, where? We found them, and of course she did her job there. So, in any event, the raising the dollar is good for imports, it's bad for exports, and they kind of balance out. We have been an importer of goods. That is, our trade balance has been negative for many, many, many years. Is that good or bad? How many people think it's good? How many think it's bad to be a... No, you're wrong. You'd always rather be an importer. Always. Because think about it. You import a good, you buy it. You now have the good. And in the case of China, let's say, we send them our money. What do they do with the money? They reinvest a portion of it back here. So we have their goods and we have their money. Not a bad deal. If you're a big exporter, you're always competing with too many other people. And so we're in a little bit more favorable position. So that's interest rates. If they go up, and they will sooner or later, they will go up. Don't be frightened by them going up. In fact, be happy, because what happened in 1994 when they had first raised interest rates, the market went down. But what happened for the next 5 years? Market goes up. 5 years straight. So you had a centrist government with slightly rising interest rates. That is the best of all worlds, and that's probably what you're going into. Okay, and the stock market, which we'll end up with, but basically from the conclusions, we're still in the bull market, still there. I think you're only in the 5th or 6th inning of it. You still got a ways to go. Okay, we've talked about that, Okay, where's the economy going? There are basically the 3 bullet points in the middle. Look at jobs, look at retail sales, and look at sentiment. Jobs. Where's the unemployment rate today? It's lower. That's good. Here's the unemployment rate right there. That's the unemployment rate. You can see in the white lines, unemployment rate going down. The nice thing about this chart, and a couple others I'll show you, look as it starts to go up shortly before the blue lines. It's telling you a recession may be coming. Okay? Where is it today? It's heading down. And it seems to be steadying out. It is not going up. Hence, probably no recession. Okay. This is jobs. This is the quit report. Quit. Q-U-I-T. That means people will quit their job before getting another one. Do you want the quit rate to go up or go down? Up. Because people are quitting thinking they can get a better job. Look what happened back in 2006. The quit rate starts to go down and down and down for 2+ years before the recession hit. It was telling you something wasn't kosher back there. Now, it's easy to look back, but the quit rate is going up. That means people are quitting their job, not in droves, but they're quitting their job thinking they can get a better job. My son-in-law, unfortunately, is not a soothsayer. Quit his job and he just got one 5 months unemployed, but that's beside the point. The genius. I won't get into him. This is sentiment. This is what's up here. Sentiment going up or down? It's up. It's going up. University of Michigan. Any University of Michigan grads here? Good. I went to Michigan State. I go to a lot of meetings, a lot of Michigan grads. You're so lucky. Who won the game? But again, you can see the white periods, the consumer sentiment is going up. That's where it is today. Now, if you look on my far left, I guess that'd be your far right, I guess. There's a drop, pretty significant drop in August of 11. Big drop. That was relatively shortly after the recession was underway. Stock market is coming back, but we had a sharp drop in consumer sentiment. What happened? Why? Specific event. Now, I know you don't know what you had for breakfast this morning, let alone what happened in August of 11. Nor do you say, what do I care? What happened? 9/11 in August of 11. Oh. No. You're off by 10 years and a month. Other than that, it's pretty close. No, sir. It was the potential shutdown of the government by the genius Republicans in Congress. They had just gotten in 10. They took over the House, and they were close in the Senate, and they said, no more spending. We're going to shut down the government. That's okay. We've had government shutdowns before. But we're not going to raise the debt ceiling. And therefore, if we don't raise the debt ceiling and you got to continue to borrow, you can't borrow because you're going to default. And that's what caused it to go down. The market dropped over 10% in about a month. And yet cooler heads prevailed. People came to their senses and it went away. And as you can see, we've been on a nice ride since then. So consumer sentiment is there. Let me go through that one. Now, this is your personal consumption. Personal consumption, that is about 70% of the economy is consumption, buying stuff. My wife thinks that is on her shoulders to keep the economy going. And I said, dear, it's not necessarily on your shoulders. She is the ultimate baby boomer. She just cannot help herself. She just can't help herself. Now, I want you to think about this, men. When we bought our house or built our house 10 years ago, I said to her, okay, 10 years ago, only 5 pillows on the bed. That's it. How many men have heard a story like that? You have too many pillows on the bed. You don't know. Okay. I told that story last week, and the guy sitting right in front of me, and Mildred says to Homer, "Keep your hand down." And he goes, "No, Mildred, I think there's too many pillows on the bed." I said, marital harmony is good. Take it away. Don't worry about it. Anyway, so my wife, 5 pillows on the bed. She keeps that contract, and she says, I got to tell you, this past summer, when you go home, because we live in Montana during the summer, when you go home, we're a little changes in the bedroom. I go, "What? 5 pillows more?" She says, "No, in fact, there's less." I go, "What do you mean?" She says, "We only have 4 pillows now, but we have a new bedspread, we have a new headboard, and we have new carpet." I go, "What?" I said, "You only put them in 10 years ago." And I said, "It's only the 2 of us. I don't care, and the dog for sure don't care." She says, "It was 10 years and I had to spend the money. I couldn't help myself." Okay, anyway, so watch consumer consumption. You can see in 07, 08, it starts to drop. That was a clue that we were heading into a recession. Look at the line since then, it's going up. There are 2 major buying seasons, actually 3, but 2 major buying seasons for sure. What are they? Christmas and what? No. Back to school. Back to school. How was back to school this year? Okay, not great, but okay, not bad. How is Christmas going to be? One guy last night said, "We already know." I said, "What?" He said, "No." I said, "Christmas is coming." He goes, "Oh, yeah, I forgot." He thought he meant last Christmas. I go, no, sir, it's next Christmas. It's coming up in about 2 months. So, in any event, do we have any clues about it? The things to watch for, because Christmas is real important to how sales are going to go. Watch the number of sales. Watch when they come. That's a clue. But you also have a real good clue by what a company did right here in Seattle. How many temps did they hire, and who was it? No, not that one. That was REI. No, I'm talking about a big company. Amazon. How many did they announce they're hiring? 100,000. My wife thinks that Amazon Prime is the greatest thing since sliced bread. She loves it. We get everything through Amazon Prime. Everything. She says, "Free shipping." I go, "What does it cost you?" She says, "I don't care. It's free shipping." That's all I care about. Well, that's great there. Any event, watch Christmas sales, how they do. It accounts for about 40% of a company's earnings, how well they're doing. 40%. So if it does well, and so far it looks pretty good, somebody did cancel, they're not going to sell on Black Friday, that's good. That means they have confidence. Some of the stores aren't going to open on Thanksgiving. I think Costco announced that, didn't they? And that's good. They never do, but there was a trend the last couple of years to do it. I happen to know Jeff Brotman personally. He's really a good guy. I mean, super good guy. Should have bought that stock. God, but in any event, they think that they're going to be doing pretty well. So, in any event, watch personal consumption. It's critical to the stock market. As long as it's going up, stock market will do just fine. Thank you. Talked about that. Okay, I've got about 2 minutes here. Luckily, we've talked about that. Buying at the top, can you make any money buying at the top? The answer is yes, you can. Because the market, on average, goes up 7 out of 10 years. And if you're in a bull market, it goes up 8 or 9 years. That's why I think you're only in the 5th inning, 6th inning of the ball game. You got a ways to go. Example of this is 1954, market high. Couldn't go in anymore. What market high did it reach? Where did it come from? The high of 1929. And everybody said, "That's it. That's it." My father, may he rest in peace, started investing in 1937, bottom of the market. And it's now 1954. My brothers, who are 17 and 15 years old, my mother says to him, "You got to get out of the market. The boys are going to college. We need the money. You can't afford to lose it." My father says, "Nah, I think Eisenhower's doing a good job. I think the world is rebuilding. I think we're going to be in pretty good shape." What did the stock market do over the next 10 years? Buying at the high. Doubled. It's now 1962, almost 10 years to the day. What happened in October 1962? Cuban Missile Crisis. What happened to the stock market that day? Way down. How big way down? Biggest drop since October 29th, 1929. And my mother says, out, get out of the market now, if not sooner. And he looks at her and goes, okay. I've been investing for 25 years. The market has gone essentially straight up. I put now my first older boys through college and law school. They're doing fine. And she says, yeah, but him, that's pointing to me, he has to go to college. If you don't get out, we're finished. He's gone. He don't have a chance. He'll be working on the streets. My father goes, okay. What does he do that night, the day the Kennedy made the announcement when the stock market crashed? He bought. Because he used to always weigh everything. What are the probabilities of it going down, going up? The event, what will happen with respect to that event? And that's why events can be very, very misleading. Look at trends of which way things are going. That's much more important. But anyways, a couple years later, the stock market didn't go to hell in a handbasket. Why? Because the event went away and everything was fine. So I said, Dad, did you really buy that much the next morning? He goes, yeah, somewhat, yeah. Was it because of Mother? A factor. And I said, well, come on. I said, well, Dad, don't you understand that it would have been World War III, Armageddon? We would have blown each other up? And he goes, yeah, I understand that. What are the probabilities? Very low. And he says, even still, who would have cared about the stock market? We'd be all blown each other up. You're right, I got your point there, Dad. So I've always learned, whenever you see an event, take it with a big, big grain of salt. Don't be like my mother, although she was a wonderful, wonderful woman. Be more like my father, who always sat back, and think about what's going on. That's why I watch the trends. Okay, I'm getting the high sign. I can stick around now for take any questions you want, and I think we should do it privately because Paul is itching to get me off the stage. Thank you very much. I hope that I've enlightened you a little bit.